Welcome to Keep Six, Connect the Six. Tonight we have a really good, powerful conversation regarding our mental health. Please come in and join us as we wait for Jodi to come on for this conversation tonight. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Let's bring Jodi in here and get this conversation going. I hope everyone is doing good and taking care of themselves. Hello, Jodi. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Of
It's my
course.
pleasure to have you here today on our platform.
I'm excited to
I
be here.
thank you. I know mental health is a really, really important part when it comes to our community. I'm still aware of that. There's a lot of people in our community that doesn't talk about it. I'm hoping tonight we are able to give them the opportunity to express. It's been a difficult past 2 years.
It has been such a difficult time for so many of us, and um it's something that we all collectively kind of understand that it's been a difficult time, but when you really sit back and reflect on like all that has really happened within the last couple of years now, since we've
Yeah.
been in the pandemic for, I guess, a bit over 2 years now, it's really been a lot. And in like preparing for this live today, I was just like sitting and thinking about like all the things that have really corresponded within these 2 years alone. We've had like a lot of stuff around like social injustices. We've had the pandemic. We've had like a war.
War.
We've had like to our neighbors of south of us, we've had like there was like an insurrection and on all sorts of things happening. Um, and so I think it's really important to kind of like sit down and kind of like reflect on everything that has been going on, right?
Right.
And a lot of us haven't been, a lot of us haven't really been coping that well, because when you think about it, when you have like multiple stressors coming in all at once, that can lead to some mental health effects, especially when we have like the coping mechanisms that we were used to being able to be involved with pre-pandemic, were sort of like taken away from us actually suddenly when that pandemic had started, right?
Right.
So like being able to just simply like go out with a friend, connect with somebody, go to the gym, things like that. Like those things were just sort of like suddenly just taken away.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so yeah, it has been such a really difficult time for many folks. And it's important to really just reflect on just the landscape of our environment, everything that's happening right now, to know that you're not alone in this. So if you're not feeling like, or if you haven't been feeling your best, you're not alone in that feeling, right?
So, with
Yeah.
that said, I'm aware when you speak about the healing part, what's going on. It's been a burden pretty much on a lot of people in our community, and just trying to cope. I
Mm-hmm.
myself have had many, many close individuals to me said, "Hey, you need to just stop, take some time for yourself, and relax and regroup." And
Yeah.
I really personally, I only kind of my brain kind of functions about just go, 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 right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it got to a point where I was ill actually myself personally, and I was actually couldn't really get up and go, go, go. And I
Yeah.
felt at that time when I was able to kind of catch a hold of myself, and after I was feeling a bit better, I still wanted to relax somewhat, right? So, and
Yeah.
I kind of listened to what you're saying because I learned over the pandemic, it actually did me good because I never stopped. I wasn't in an area where employment stopped for me. I continued to
Okay.
go.
Yeah.
So for me, I had some friends and, support that gave me to say, well, you need to take time for yourself. So I kind of learned to now I actually
Yeah.
turn off my phone and it's like, if whatever happens, happens, it's that my me time.
Yep. And
So I
you,
think that's something that we have to, as a community, really have to kind of look at ourselves and try to take the time to um, regroup,
yeah,
right?
I definitely agree with that. And it's interesting that you said that, you're usually somebody that's like, go, 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 but, because of, like your body was like basically telling you to stop. And that's a lot of the times where I end up seeing people is, they're in like burned out state or their body is just physically ill. It's literally your body's way of telling you you need to either stop or slow it down, right?
Right.
Because otherwise, if you kind of like keep going at like 100%, um, then your body's not going to have it. Your body's going to let you stop some way, somehow. It's going to happen, right? So it's really important to pay attention to our own signals. And um, I usually tell people that, recognize when you are at a state where you're like you're good, like your mental health is good, your health is good, you're
Mhm.
at a good place. That way, when you're not at a good place, you know that you're not at a good place, right? You might be exhibiting certain signs that's telling you, okay, like maybe I need to do something different. Or in your case, it's like maybe I need to, slow it down or take a pause, right? Otherwise, our body will do that work for us.
Right.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
the
very
thing
much so.
about it is about to be able to accept that also too, right?
Yeah,
It
it's
was
hard.
very challenging for me personally just to be
Hmm.
able to stop, right?
Yeah,
I find it very difficult because you now you have the anxiety and your mind start playing on you. Well, you had this to do, you had that to do, and it wasn't done. And how is it going to get done? So, but then I
right.
learned the fact that you have to ask yourself, well, if if you're gone, I'm sure it's not going to get done, or someone else is going to do it. So
Right.
that is how I kind of challenge myself, or put it in
Yeah.
perspective.
And I think it's so much harder for those of us who are in the helping field because we are just so ingrained to like help other people. We're like, okay, like this person needs help. Um, I need to keep going. Even for myself as like a wellness coach and a therapist too, I want to be able to be there and show up for my clients. But the thing we have to realize is, if we're not good, then how are we going to be able to help anybody else? Right. So the thing I emphasize a lot is that like you cannot pour from an empty cup. So you have to be able to take care of yourself, your needs, to be able to really help other people. Right. It starts with us. It starts with us.
Right.
100%. Yeah.
So, what would you say, even when it comes to anxiety and mental health, and even dealing with, what are some of the points that you would suggest for individuals out there? And the other thing is resources. I've had several phone calls reach out to Keep
Yeah.
Six for resources. One of the biggest problem we have is that a lot of these resources are um, costly.
Yes.
So
Can
what
be.
I'm looking for, or is there any resources that's available to the community where they're able to have, someone to talk to, even address anxiety,
Yeah.
even not feeling, they're 100%, you know.
Yeah, so for sure. For the first point in terms of how to combat anxiety, so first I think it's going back to that point of understanding that you're not alone. Many of us have, suffered with anxiety, anxious thoughts, constantly worrying, constantly on edge. So, you're not alone because the current environment right now, it kind of lends to a very scary factor, right? It's a very unknown and very scary factor.
Right.
Where anxiety tends to become more of a problem is if, you're constantly consumed by it. You're constantly consumed by the unknown. You're constantly consumed by the hypotheticals. What if XYZ were to happen? What if, so constantly doing those what ifs and replaying, scenarios in your head, that's where it can get really tough. And to the point where, your body is in this kind of like fight or flight mode constantly. So if you recognize that's the state that you're in, then, you might, need to get a little bit more support with that. In terms of, when we're talking about anxiety and some simple strategies in terms of how to start to combat it, one is definitely to do a bit of journaling. So journaling some of your thoughts, getting it down on paper. A lot of the times, we tend to have like conversations in our minds, and we tend to just ruminate and just think about it over and over and over again, right? So if there is a way for you to like jot it down, get it out of your mind, get it on paper, designate a little bit of time every day to do that, and just do a little bit of reflection, that's definitely a great start. And then I also do like mindfulness work. And with that type of work is really helping you to recognize and be aware of like all of the senses that are happening to you. So even being able to recognize when you're in that anxious state, and starting to understand what that is all about. So a bit of mindfulness, and you can do like literally on YouTube. If you go to YouTube and just type in like a 5-minute guided meditation, right, to help you start your day out. It can help you to really set that tone for the day, help you to get in a nice mindset, and helps you to really, unwind a little bit. So even if you do that like first thing in the morning, or maybe in the afternoon for like your wind down routine, that's definitely a great start in terms of working through anxiety. And if you're finding that it is a little bit too much to bear, at that point, I would say, get connected with, a healthcare provider, a doctor, nurse practitioner, somebody that can really help you to understand your symptoms and think about like what's next for you, right? In terms of resources that people can connect with in the community. So there are a few. They're more Ontario based. So for anybody outside of Ontario, you might have to kind of look into some other stuff. But in terms of Ontario, for therapy, there is a network called the Affordable Therapy Network. And with that network is like really a reduced rate of therapy. So some people have access to that. There's one. In terms of other sources, so if you are currently working and you do have, extended health benefits, I always tell people to make sure you review your benefits, see if you do have coverage. A lot of people actually do have coverage for therapy, whether it's like a social worker, psychologist, psychotherapist. Just make sure you review what you have access to. And lots of companies also offer EAP services, which is employee assistant, an employee assistant provider. And basically that's where your company outsources another company to provide short-term therapy solutions. So that's just a reminder to, if you are currently employed, look into your benefits, see what you have to offer, see what they have to offer, and access those services. So there's that. And then there's also looking into community mental health centers. Those are really a great way to connect to community resources wherever you're at, right? So, and you can access that through 211 Ontario, either online, or you can, I believe you can just call in 211. So I think that's a great place to start. And of course, if you are in a crisis type of situation, you can always contact Crisis Services Canada, and they do actually do texting overnight as well too, which is a nice little feature of them. So if you're ever in distress and having any sort of suicidal ideation and you just need somebody to talk to and you don't really want to let your family in on that, Crisis Services Canada is a great support. Yeah.
Well, with that said, I mean, you spoke the part that kind of touched me there was the suicidal part there. I personally have lost two friends over the COVID from suicide, right?
Oh, I'm
Which
sorry
was
to hear
very
that.
surprising. So it just goes to show that,
Mm.
um, I mean, it's very, very prominent in our community. A lot of people feel that they don't need to talk about it. And we already have that stigma of where, you have to be a man and be strong. And, you're just, it's nothing at all, right? So, I mean, it
Yeah.
comes to the point about where individuals have to be able to comfortable to address it. But also the other problem I find is a lot of people um, trying to find someone to talk to is the
Yeah.
fact of finding someone that you're comfortable with, right?
Right.
And, I've heard from individuals, even myself, I'd love to sit down and talk to someone that looks like me or can relate
Right.
to my struggles or so forth, right?
Yeah.
So that's another problem we have within our community, I think, that kind of make people a little bit on the uncomfortable side, right?
Yeah, for sure. And especially if you're dealing with, even like racial based issues. And of course, you want somebody reflected, like you in that therapy process, right? Um, the good news is, I don't know if you've heard of the Black Therapist List, but that's a new network. I believe they're about a year or so old, and it has a list of Black therapists on that directory.
Right,
And just like kind of going back to if you are trying to access therapy services, because I know you were mentioning before that it can be a very pricey um, thing to do is to look into therapy. And if you are finding that you're not able to afford it, or you're kind of like struggling to say like, oh, should I do this? Like, would it be worthwhile? Um, if you are, kind of leaning towards, yeah, maybe I do need a therapist, make sure you ask if they have a sliding scale, because a lot of therapists do actually offer a sliding scale, which is basically like a reduced rate for people who are, financially strapped, right? So,
right.
um, advocating for your needs, like while in this process as well, is just so important, and recognizing that there is stigma to accessing therapy, but realizing that if you kind of like make that shift of, okay, well, this is to help me with my coping skills, this is to help me strengthen my resiliency, this is to here to help me feel better and do better, right?
Right.
And it'll help you kind of realize that, yeah, it is something that a lot of people can really really benefit from, right? So therapy is such a, yeah, it's such a stigma with it, but I feel like our society is sort of like slowly moving away from that concept, but it is there to help you feel better, to help you be better. And if you're able to access those services, like, why not, right? If you can feel better about yourself, feel better about your life, um it can definitely help, for sure.
And now, what services do you provide or do you offer?
Yeah. So so I'm a licensed therapist in Ontario, and then I also practice as a wellness coach for moms who are stressed out. Um, Throughout the pandemic, I have come across so many moms who are just burnt out, right? Like we're having to juggle multiple things, put on multiple hats, right? Trying to work, trying to do virtual schooling, trying to just juggle everything, manage the household, all while trying to maintain our own mental health. So I work with overwhelmed moms who are really struggling to feel good about themselves again. And I help them get back to feeling like themselves, and I help them get back to prioritizing themselves. So that's what I'm working on right now. And I also do speaking sessions as well too for organizations.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much. I mean, it's a pleasure, to have you on our platform and to be able to discuss this very important issue. And please, if anyone out there have any information or like to connect with Jodi, please, we're more than welcome, and I'll put your information up, your contact, your email, on
Yeah.
our stream so that people are able to reach out to you. The other thing I like to mention is when you are dealing with someone who's a particular, like a family that has somebody, and you can see that their behavior, uh, and so forth, and there's mental health issues, but at the same time, it's very difficult to get that person to admit or to get them to go to counseling or something. How do you feel that we could go about something like that, or what's the best route to address something like that? To any advice?
Yeah, I would say it's so hard to get somebody to go who isn't ready to go yet. Um, but to that, I would say continue to talk to them, continue to, connect, reach out, offer support. Anywhere where you can offer support is your best bet, because um, I don't know if you've heard of like the stages of change model. So if we're in the stages of change model, that means that, there's pre-contemplation. You're thinking about, making that change.
Mhm.
Contemplation, actually like, making a plan to do it, then action, and then maintenance, right? And it's all sort of like cyclical. And we use this sort of in the addiction model as well, too. So if somebody is not even at that pre-contemplation stage, they're not even like thinking about um, getting help, getting support, then it's going to be hard for that person on their own to make that decision to go. So, all that we can do is continue to support them, advise them, maybe offer them multiple perspectives,
Right.
or maybe having like other folks sort of talking to them so that they can kind of move their way into change, right? That's all we can really do at that point. But I would say, continue to connect, continue to support, continue to do what you're doing, because it's so important. And a lot of the times it does really, really, really help. Sometimes you think, okay, like it's not working, they're staying the same. But a lot of times just us being connected to other people is really helpful.
Yeah. The other thing is, at Keep Six, we give support to individuals who have been incarcerated.
Right.
Um, it's very much clear about the amount of mental health issues when it comes to incarceration. At the present time, we have a severe uh, problem within institutions right now where our Black males are being mentally break down, mentally
Mm-hmm.
abused, and
Yeah.
physically abused.
Yeah.
Now, my concern is uh, how do we, as a community, support these individuals, but also get them to the point where they're able to overcome that trauma that they have gone through in, through their process and so forth.
That's huge. That's huge, because that trauma piece is a huge hurdle to overcome, right? And I do a bit of trauma work as well too, but it's really important to process the trauma. And a lot of people, what they'll end up doing is that, if you've been through like some traumatic events or just repetitive events happening over and over and over that have been very traumatic, is that we avoid thinking about it. We like push it to the back burner, like, no, I'm okay, like it's fine. You push it to the back until it really like becomes like a part of just like who we are. Um, so that being said, it's really important to kind of go through that therapeutic process with somebody that is trained in trauma to be able to help individuals really process it, understand it, work their way through it, ascribe like some meaning to it and understanding to it. Otherwise, they will continue to experience mental health impacts from it. So it's really important for people to start to process the trauma, and work through it, because if we don't work through it, then it's just going to continue to impact us, unfortunately. So,
Right.
yeah.
Now, thank you very much. But with that said, now, as dealing with trauma itself, and with these individuals in the care of our government, I think this is when we talk about reintegration. I think this is
Mm-hmm.
something part of their post-release should be, looked at and addressed.
Yeah, I agree.
Right?
I agree.
Um, because
Yeah,
you can't. It's like you have a vehicle and you in an accident with your vehicle and it's all banged up. Well, you have to take it to the body shop to get it repaired or a mechanic. Well, you have these individuals, you're abusing them or having
yeah,
them in that we have to. There has to be some sort of accountability, right? That's how I
for
see it.
sure.
But
For sure.
also to make these individuals better people and function in society, we have to give them the tools and assist them to get them back on track, which more
Yeah,
or less would probably reduce the rate of someone reoffending again too, right?
for sure. I agree. I definitely think as part of their reintegration process, there should be some sort of therapeutic process involved in it, because um, a lot of the times people don't commit crimes for no reason, right? Like
Right,
usually, there's some significant, stressors, or so, something happening in their worlds that kind of like trigger some of the behaviors, right? Like even when we
right,
think about when we're raising children, children might like express like their behaviors outwardly, but inwardly, like something's happening there, right? It's just
right.
not like a random occurrence. It's something that's happening internally. So, having that ability to process our emotions is very significant and very impactful, right? And that's where, like a lot of those like community resources can really come into play. It can be helpful in terms of like some of the community mental health centers that we can start to get involved with, and maybe like form some like partnerships with like reintegrative services to help, because a lot of those experiences are very, very common, right?
Right.
A lot of people have been like through so much trauma, or like racial trauma, even, right? So it's really important to like come together as a community, form partnerships, to be able to provide that impact, right? Yeah.
Yes. The other thing is, how would you say it's best for family to even deal with something like that? When you have someone, your loved one, it could be a mother, it could be a wife, it could be a sister, and you have that person coming out and you've seen that person, you're getting phone calls and you know what they've gone through. How do you, as a family, support that person to kind of help them to heal, to be, there's a lot of times I hear story, well, you know, he wasn't like this until this happened to him,
Mm,
right? So how do
yeah.
we, as a community, be able to work together to help these individuals, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's so hard to have, that impact with the family as well too. And a lot of the times there could be also like some toxic family dynamics happening as well too. So even
Right,
um considering like if you do have a family member that has been incarcerated and that's coming home, is to one, look at our own mental health, right? As family members, like, are we good? Are they coming back into an environment that is not so healthy? Looking into that to say like, okay, like, am I the healthiest person that I can be right now? Do I need extra support? um, can I maybe attend like a support group? people who have been incarcerated before. Looking into what other supports can I have in place to surround this individual to help to support their resiliency. Those are some things that we can consider if we are a family member that is concerned. And then again, like going back to connecting to that individual, trying to provide, positive supports and positive mentorship around that individual if we can, and getting in touch with like the resources that are available to us.
Right. Now, we have an individual here. We're just speaking about this particular topic. And I know there's a gentleman here who's incarcerated in the States, Jay Burton. I just saw him come on. I'm going to bring him on for a minute here because I think we're on the right topic where I would love to hear from him. Yeah. I don't know if his connection. Sometimes his connection is very good.
Yep. There he is.
Y'all see me?
Yeah.
I can't see you guys. So what I'm gonna have to do, I'm gonna go out and come back in because I can't see you.
Right.
I'm gonna go out.
Not a problem. Thank you. Yes. So I mean, there's a perfect example. It's kind of like we're talking on a topic, and there's someone, and I think it would be kind of good to share thoughts and see how he coped. This is an individual who's been incarcerated for 32 years of his life and still fighting for his freedom for a crime he did not commit.
Oh my goodness.
So it's been very, very difficult. And I think it would be interesting just to hear how he's been surviving mentally for the last 30-something years, right?
That's so tough.
And, I mean, it's well overdue to bring him home, most definitely. But with that said, one of my more or less question to you is that how do you feel in society-wise when it comes to especially our community? How do you feel that we can best be good to ourselves and be able to overcome? Because we're carrying generational trauma.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I feel that's something that has to be addressed overall within our family and our community.
100%. I definitely agree with that. And generational trauma is definitely huge. And a lot of us don't realize that we're in it. I think, that's one of the first things is to recognize it and to realize like what's happening. For a lot of us, it's like sometimes we don't even like know the difference between like healthy communication and maybe like unhealthy communication, right? And so when we're like about to like have our kids as well too, it's like that consciousness of, okay, like, do I want to raise my kids the way that I was raised? Like right. A lot of us from, even like the millennial generation, we are very active in terms of like more conscious parenting, right? To be able to recognize like, okay, like is, hitting a child necessarily a good practice? Is, like yelling at a child or degrading a child necessarily a good practice, right? A lot of the right. times we have to reflect on our own childhood to help us really get to a brighter future, to help, break that trauma, because, that's what we want to do, is to break the trauma.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. Jay's back. Jay, thank you so much for joining. I just saw you and I figured I'd bring you in. Yes. This is perfect timing because I was talking about mental health with individuals who are incarcerated and coming out back in the community or just trying to deal with it on the inside. So my question to you tonight is, how have you been coping for the last 30 odd years mentally?
Well, to be honest with you, it hasn't been easy. I've been incarcerated since I was 16. Now I'm like, I'll be 50 this year, and I'm out here in California. So the way we deal with things in mental health situation here, actually the mental health system has improved over the years, but it took a lot of us to go to court. Actually, they sent the petition to federal courts to change the mental health system in here. And then there's a lot of us who really don't take advantage of it because of the stigma of Black men getting involved with the whole mental health system. And there's times that you got a lot of us in here, we discourage people from looking for that help. So we feel that if you go over there, you better stay over there because you intermingling with people over there, like what we call PCs. They got a lot of people that's in protected custody. So you mingling with people that's in protected custody because they're in protected custody for a reason. They may be a child molester or whatever, but and then you mingling with these guys over there in the mental health. And then when they come back over here, dudes, you got to answer up to a lot of stuff. So it's a cold process when you dealing with people that really need the help.
Right.
But we got what they call the prison politics of things. And in prison politics, it kind of messed things up for people who really want to get help. But there are many that do seek help, that reach out and get the help. But the thing is, a lot of times we don't take this stuff serious.
Right.
We don't take it serious because a lot of times they be like, well, there's no rehabilitation, prison, stuff like that. But look, first and foremost, you got to want to be rehabilitated before you can even try to reach out for rehabilitations. Right. And there's a lot of us who don't even go through their programs. We just know that it's time for us to get saved right now. So I don't really need you guys. I need myself, and I have to be serious with myself. Because a lot of us, we don't take that time to really just like, you know what? I'm tired of this lifestyle. I'm tired of running two things. Once I start realizing that I have to fix myself. Now, there's some things that I can't confront. So what I am going to do, I realize this is all the tools I have right here. But now I realize that when it comes to mental health things, I have to go to the professionals so they can help me identify, excuse me. So they can help me identify what it is that I'm going through.
Right.
Because there's sometimes we're not even recognizing what it is that we're actually going through. So we do need to seek that help, that extra help. But we got to take the stigma off of going to seek treatment is a bad thing. See, once we take that off the table, that's getting help is a bad thing, a lot of us will start, getting that help that we know that we need. Because it's not a macho thing to go seek mental health treatment.
No, not at all.
But it's a macho thing to continue to fail, to continue to do self-destructive things. Them are macho things, but we got it twisted. We got to untwist it, reverse that mindset, and go forward. Because the things that we've been doing, we haven't been going forward. We've been stagnated, stuck in this position, or just going backwards. But every time we get to that stagnation point, we still go backwards again. So what we got to do, like I say, we got to take the stigma off of what is mental health. We got to have people that look like me that goes, in front of people and let people see that, you know what? There's nothing wrong with this, because there's some things that I might not understand about myself on why I keep snapping the way I'm snapping. Because I haven't dealt with I haven't dealt with that issue. And the only way I'm going to know about this issue that I have, I may have to seek some professional help so they can help me identify what that situation is.
So with yes. That said, when you're looking from the inside, and Jodi, maybe you can even help me with this. You have someone like Jay, who has been there for 30-something years, and he's coming out back in the community, right? How do we address to support someone like Jay? I mean, these are difficult times. He's in a different state of mind. It's a different world that he's been living in, right?
Hello, my name is David.
I think
I command live to sing.
Pardon me?
Can I go ahead and sing?
You want to sing? What would you like to sing, David?
A song.
Okay, let me hear your song. Go ahead.
Okay. There goes my heart beating, and you are the reason that I'm still breathing. Please come back now. There goes my heart beating, and you are the reason that I'm still reading. Please come back now. I come every mountain and swim every ocean just to be with you and fix what I broke. Care for, 'cause I need you to receive, and you are the reason. That's it.
Thank you so much.
Yay. That was amazing.
Yes, and I come on the left to say I'm just sing. I do not go to school
You sing
because my mother do not have any money to send me
to school.
Mm.
Where do you live?
in
You're in
Jamaica.
Jamaica. Okay,
Mm.
that's very nice.
Yeah, and I do not go to school, and I should go to school tomorrow, and I think I'm not going.
No, you're not going. Well, we'll
Yeah.
hope that you go to school. And thank you so much for coming on. And we'll keep you in our prize, and you keep on your singing and keep on practicing. Okay.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
bye.
Thank you.
And thank you. That was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A different moment, a beautiful moment, inspiration. I mean,
Yeah.
that was
Perfect timing.
nice.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about. You know, that's what
Yeah.
boosts our mental health right there.
Yes.
Yes, it will. Yes,
You know.
it is. It's anything that feed our spirit,
Feed our spirit.
not take away from our spirit, but things that feed our spirit is the things that it can better our conditions.
Right.
For sure.
And like, okay, but when we dealing with mental health issues, we have to we do need to seek help.
For sure.
But we got, because that help is going to help us get to the root of the problems. Because a lot of times we tend to deal with the problem, but we don't really deal with the root. Because we got to get to the root of the problem, just basically so we can uproot that seed and take it up out of you. Because the only way you're gonna take it up out of you got to know what the seed is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Because a lot of us really have no idea what the seed is that keep us constantly in this conflict. First of all, I have a conflict within myself. That's why I get at you the way I get at you in a negative fashion, because I have a conflict with myself. And a lot of times it's going to be hard for me to identify that conflict within myself because I'm so used to this. It's been in me for so long that I don't really realize that it's actual problem.
Right.
So it may take somebody to sit me down and tell me, look, man, this is the problem. After I listen to your story, well, this seemed to be a problem. But what we got to do is not be defensive when somebody is actually trying to tell us something. Because a lot of times when we do defensive, we really not trying to hear what we're saying. We always got an excuse. Here's an excuse, because them excuses are our defense.
Right. So Jodi, Jay just brought up a good point regarding having conflict within yourself, because that's a perfect thing, because I think personally a lot of individuals, there's some kind of conflict going on with them, and that's what's getting them caught up in the system because they don't know that they have a conflict inside, right? So these are the things that we need to take the time to look at ourselves in depth, and Jay brought that up, a very, very good point, right? So would it be fair to say that that would be a part of trauma, or how would that categorize?
That's definitely a part of trauma, right? Having that internal conflict within ourselves, like you were mentioning, Jade, like we have to recognize that certain things that we think is normal, it's not actually, right? To be in constant battle and constant conflict within yourself, within your own mind, that is not something that you should be going through, right? And it's important, as you said, to be able to have somebody validate your experiences and to recognize that you have been going through a lot, and to recognize that what you've been doing and what you've been manifesting, what manifests as behavior is actually most times is mental health stuff going on within us, right? But until we address that, we're going to continue to repeat the same behaviors over and over and over and over until we're just okay, I've had enough. I cannot deal with this anymore. I need to figure out why I keep doing the things that I'm doing. Otherwise, it's just going to continue to reappear. So we have to be able to address that. And that's why it's really important to have to surround ourselves with like supportive people and have supportive, you know, family or friends or mentors or what have you, to be able to tell you like, okay, like what you're doing isn't, you know, isn't right now. You know, is that helpful for you or is that unhelpful, right? And a lot of the times in the Black community, especially like amongst men as well too, is mental health really manifests very differently, right? It manifests very differently for men and Black men in general. Whereas, you know, somebody else with mental health might be like, oh, you know, like I just feel sad all the time, I'm crying, right? Whereas somebody else, it might be like more of like self-destructive behavior. It might manifest as anger, right? It might manifest as, you know, the world is against me, so I need to have that like protective shield over me, right? But that's definitely something to consider as well, to very much manifest differently within our community. So it's very important to recognize that.
But look, what if somebody, this is what I do when a situation arises on these prison yards. I'm gonna give you an example of some, and we got to deal with it, especially when it comes to racial issues. We got to deal with it. A lot of times, just because I have influence, that doesn't mean that I can influence everyone.
Right.
So this is what I try to do. I try to utilize, okay, who I know this person will look up to more than he will me. I would utilize him to go communicate to him. So now when we come back to the like you know, us Black men, especially in them urban areas that we grew up in, a lot of us is not trying to hear none of that you're talking about.
Right.
So we have to find another way to have somebody that they look up to that can slide this information to them.
Right.
But a lot of times we don't have a lot of this information in our communities because we're not trying to hear this kind of stuff. Like I said, we got to make this a end thing to do. We got to show them that this is something that's really cool. We got to, I'm telling you, we got to really make things cool for people to accept and embrace that kind of stuff.
Right.
I'm gonna give you a perfect example about something here in California, like with the Hispanic inmates. I hate using the word inmates, but with the Hispanic prisoners, they don't play that you going to the psych at all.
Right.
They don't play that, and you go to there, you better not come back on the yard. So, and we know that a lot of people really do need help. But when we dealing with this prison politics of things, because a lot of us in prison, we do need help. I'm one of the ones. I done got help throughout the years, because there was times that was so dark that I just didn't feel like even taking another day. There was times it was real dark, and I didn't see no hope. I didn't see no light. I didn't see nothing. I just like, man, look, let me just get this over with. So there's many times that I didn't seek help because I need someone to talk to. And then there was this one psych doctor told me one time, I said, why me? And she said, why not you?
Right.
And for years, that always stuck with me. Why not me? And I never really had an answer to it, but I know that I was put here for a reason. And my reason for being put here is that I had to become a voice for those who can't be a voice. A lot of times, but no matter how hardcore a lot of these dudes are and all this stuff, they are still human.
For sure.
They are still people. They are people that has feelings as well. So when you in prison now, you stripped of, you being a man. You stripped of that. So now you got to be of this lower class. You have to walk a certain walk in these prisons because you don't have that status no more to be a man, because these people tell you what to do, when to do, how to do it, and all that stuff. So if I buck their system, I may be able to buck it today, but I am going to get in trouble. And the people that controls your life is just, you look at them like, you wouldn't dare even look at me on the streets, but you're not on the streets no more.
Right.
So this comes in, this also plays a role in our mental health, because you got to really lower your standards in these prisons. And when you lower your standards, what I mean that the person, your moral standards, the things, your principles that you live on, you can't necessarily live on that in prison, because you're going to get caught up in some stuff. Hey, could you bring Joseph P. Langdon on? Because that's one of my brothers, one of my comrades. He did 22 years. He's been out for about a year now. Perfect example on how we could continue this conversation that deals with the mental health thing. You see him on there?
No, I don't.
Joseph,
no, I don't.
So look, yeah, that Joseph P. Langdon, he did 22 years. That's my comrade. He been out for 1 year. Perfect example of when we talk about this mental health stuff.
Right.
So the thing is, we got to find a way to make this a cool thing to go. That's why I use the Hispanics in California. You better not go to no mental health. Talking about only way they can go to the mental health is when they're going up for parole and they do what they call psych evaluations.
Right.
So you got to go through a psych evaluation before you can go up for parole, because the psych want to say this. Right. You tell the psych all this information, and then they go and see if you're a high risk, a medium risk, or a low risk. Back in 2014, 15, I was in solitary confinement for 9 years, not because I did anything, but because the way I think now. The way I think had me locked up for almost a decade. But it was more people that had that kind of that revolutionary mindset. They was back there 20, 30 years in isolation. But it took us to do multiple hunger strikes. And 3 people to die in hunger strikes for us to eventually got out. But that's a whole nother story. Where I'm going with that is that I had got out in 2015. A psych, and they did what they started a youth offender parole hearings for guys who was juveniles, they were tried as adults. So they started this whole new thing. And don't you know, I went and talked to the psych. I said, because I'm also a jailhouse lawyer, meaning that, I litigate a lot of people's stuff. So I already know how psychs think, the ones that work for the system. I said, you're going to sit here and talk to me for about 30 minutes. More like you're going to give me a report that's not favorable for me. So I said, I've been out here for about 6, 7 months now, because I was in solitary confinement for like 9 years. So some of these staff on here, they know who I am. Could you just go speak to them and ask them the type of person I am? I challenged her to do that. I knew she wasn't going to do it, but I challenged her to do it, but she didn't do it. And because a lot of staff, when they get the chance to know me, they be like, man, why is you in prison? You feel me? So the thing is, so she didn't do it. So she said, I grew up as a gang member out in LA. I grew up as a blood. And so I know all about that stuff. Because where I was born and raised at, that's where it all started at. So the thing is, I know all about that stuff. So when she asked me this question, she said, so what you think about gang members? I said, well, all gang members are not bad people. But that was the wrong thing to say. I didn't know that was the wrong thing to say. Because I know majority of gang members don't really do it. It's the small percentage that actually do stuff, and it make it look like everybody's doing it. But it's really a small percentage that do like the way out stuff. Then it's a little more that do a little extra, but it ain't as way out. But the thing is, I've been around them my whole life, and I know that the majority of the dudes I grew up with didn't do nothing. We was just because we're in a neighborhood, and we just claimed the neighborhood that we're in. Majority of them wasn't doing nothing. But when I explained that to her, that was the wrong thing to say, and they used that against me. And the woman said in the parole report during the psych evaluation, she said, I am a high risk. See, once they labeled you a high risk, you will not get parole at all. Yeah. The woman said I was a high risk. I couldn't believe. And the lawyer said, look, when you're dealing with this parole system, especially in psych, you got to tell them what they want to hear. Even with the parole board, you got to tell them what they want to hear. And the thing is like, wow. When I went in there in the parole hearing, I had, they said, okay, if you was to get out, what would you do? I said, well, I got a lot of people that's behind me. A lot of people want to help me in all kind of ways. And I got to show them letters from all kind of people. They was just all kind of people want to help me when I get out. And okay, later in a process of the parole board, they say, you know what? You came in here sounding like a lawyer. You didn't come in here sound like an inmate. See, when you call me an inmate, I feel that you've been condescending towards me.
Okay.
So I take offense of that when you call me that kind of stuff. So the thing is, but I kept my cool. And he said, when we asked you, what would you do? We expected you to say that you would clean floors and everything. I couldn't believe it. I said, what? He said, yeah, we expect you to say stuff like that. I'd do anything, even if I have to clean floors to stay. I said, well, that's not me.
Right.
Not saying I won't do it, but I'm not going to give you the pleasure to keep trying to keep your foot on my neck.
Right. So, Jodi, with that
Mm-hmm.
said, that is a case of someone has to go through a process of reprogramming the mind of the way of thinking, right?
Yeah.
And that back to exactly where we started this conversation was about individuals getting out and being able to give them that support to program them to come back into society because there's so much trauma
Yeah.
that they're carrying from within, right?
Yeah. And I can see Jay's point in terms of like you're not wanting to get help in that system, right? You're explaining that, you know, the fact that when you go to the level of psych, it's like it's really just for like technical purposes, right? It doesn't seem like it might be as helpful as it could be. So in terms of like when we're reintegrating into the community, that's where like the community supports come in. And I think the first thing is really dealing with the mindset shift, right? So
Right.
if we're thinking that, you know, everybody is against us and, you know, the whole system is, you know, like corrupt and stuff, obviously we're coming from, you know, if we're coming from like the jail system, then it's like, it's
Right.
very hard. It's going to be a very difficult transition to come into the community and then try to seek support, right? And that's where representation really comes in, as Jay was mentioning, right? In terms of having other people start to, you know, talk to, you know, people that are, you know, recently coming out and putting that idea in the brain, like, hey, maybe, you know, like maybe we can like see somebody together, or, you know, maybe we can start to talk about this, you know, hey, you know, sometimes there's like, you know, barbershop programs that will
Yeah.
sort of like talk about like the mental health aspect, and it's like a safe space, and that could be a nice transition and a nice gateway into something where you can start to process those thoughts. Because
Definitely.
as I was saying, you know, as somebody that goes through trauma, you really have to work through that process. You have to work through those thoughts, and it's really going to take a professional that knows what they're doing in terms of trauma work to be able to, you know, help somebody to process and get through it. And you know, there's so much like power in that, and coming from, you know, such like a dark place to transitioning into, you know, like, hey, yeah, I can do this. I can do this. I feel my purpose. I know what my purpose is. I know what I'm here for, you know, whether it's to help other people through this process as well. It's very necessary. It's very necessary. So I definitely agree. The representation is very important, and having those like community gateway programs to help us, as I was kind of talking about, like the stages of change model, help us get through starting to think about in that pre-contemplation stage, starting to think about like, oh, okay, like that sounds like an interesting program. Maybe I should think about going, or, you know,
Right.
something to that effect. But like even just slowly starting to change that mindset. I think, you know, there is sort of a bit of a conscious shift happening within society nowadays, especially with the pandemic, and so many people going through mental health issues, right? I think there was a study by the Canadian Mental Health Association that said about 80% of Canadians' mental health has been impacted by the pandemic alone, right? So
Right.
it's becoming more normalized. And, you know, I've definitely noticed like a more uptake in services in terms of people seeking out help that who wouldn't normally seek out help. And that's huge. That's a huge shift, right? Especially within the Black community, where there is such a huge stigma around it. But sometimes it's like, you know, being able to be open and honest. So like if, you know, if we're like maybe like a family member of somebody that's coming out, and maybe like we've been through, you know, therapy of our own, or we sought help, like being open about it, talking about it, like, hey, you know, like I went and accessed these services
So
and it has helped me, and, you know, like I think it can help you too. And, you know, like starting those dialogues to normalize seeking mental health services.
right.
And if you think about it, like mental health is health, right?
Yeah.
That's what I want to get across to everybody. Mental health is health. So just like you look after your physical health, you go to the gym, you try to eat nutritiously, you go to the doctor if there's symptoms, same thing with mental health, right?
Correct. And
We have to exercise that muscle.
and thank you so much.
You know, before we go, I want to include something because
we only
when I was writing my
we
book,
have 1 minute. 1 minute.
okay, look, when I was writing my book, when I wrote this book, The Life and Times of a LA Hub by Jay Burton, which is on Amazon. When I wrote this book, it opened my mind. It unlocked something and opened my mind up to a lot of things because I didn't know a lot of stuff until I started writing my book. I didn't know a lot of stuff about my family till I wrote this book, and it all started making sense. Because the reason why I'm going with that is that a lot of times if you don't have the answer, just write down a lot of stuff and just start writing and try to figure out, because that can help unlock the box to what's been going on.
Right.
So that's why I did that. It's to show the book. I wrote that book for not just the unlock it. I didn't realize that book would have unlocked a lot of stuff and what was going on within my life.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always good to write. I myself wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning, something's going on in my head. I've got my writing pad at night when I write it down and so forth. And a lot of people who knows me and close to me, they are the ones who get the first phone call in the morning from me because I've got an idea that came up that I had on the pad. So, you know, I mean, that is so true. Jodi, I want to say thank you. Our time is running out. I want to say thank you so much for being a part and being on this our podcast today. And Mr. Jay Burton, it's wonderful seeing you and you jumping on here. I didn't expect you, but hey, you know, it's so inspiring for everybody. And, you know, keep your head up, stay positive, continue the fight, never stop, my brother. You know what I mean? You gotta have
keep going.
You know?
Yes, thank you. Every time I come on there, I get a good friend. I got Jordana, the attorney. She's a good friend of mine now. So I appreciate everything you've done for me.
Thank you so much.
I truly do. You have opened the door up for a lot. So thank you. You know, I'm going to do everything I can for you, bro.
Thank you so much. Jodi, why don't you tell our audience here how we can reach you a little bit so that in case, you know, they want to have some mental health, some anxiety, they can reach you.
Hey, slide into my DMs. I'm always open there. And check my profile. I have a free guide for stress and anxiety, specifically for moms who are overwhelmed. So that's in my bio. Link is in my bio. But DM me. I'm open.
And what's your Instagram handle?
At Creating New Steps.
At Creating No. Okay, folks, check out Jodi at Creating New Step on the Instagram. And again, everyone, thank you so much for joining us. Stay tuned for our next segment next week. We'll be having another important topic. Don't forget to join us. Follow us at keep6.org. Follow us on our YouTube where you can watch these segments and on our Instagram Live. And if you have someone out there who's suffering from mental health or wants some support, don't be ashamed. Don't be shy. Contact us, keep6, KEEP, the number 6.org. We'll connect you with someone in our community. Here's one of our psychotherapists, Natasha Pinnacle. She's just here. So sorry we missed her. Our time is running out. We'd love to connect with her also sometime. Everyone, so please stay safe. God bless, and thank you again. And as always, be safe and be strong. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Peace. All right now.